Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Well, let's crack on with today's first story. Now today's first story comes from TWA4. And before we do get into it, I just want to let you know there is mentions of miscarriage within the story as well. So if you do want to skip it, then of course it's totally understood, and please do skip the video because I think this would be a one video story. And it's titled, My Wife 31 Female Asked Me 34 Male to choose between my mum 55 female and her. I think I'm going to divorce her. Throw away account. Little background. My mum and dad were both orphans. My dad died 2 weeks before I was born. My mum didn't really have a support system, so we were just the two of us. I never lacked anything because my mother worked all her life to give me the life I have today, and didn't even have time for herself to start a new life again. She did all the little jobs possible so that we didn't miss anything. She deprived herself of food to give me food, had very good clothes while she had none. I saw her make sacrifices again and again, and always with a smile. Frankly, I always thought she was an angel dressed in a human body. The only time she yelled at me was when I was 16, when I saw her getting sick and working at the same time. I wanted to help by finding a job, but she was angry and told me it was not my job to take care of her, and it was up to her to take care of me. She wanted me to get really good grades and to get into the best universities. It's the only way I can protect myself when she can't anymore. Even at university, she didn't want me to work. I had to be focused on my studies, but she wanted me to volunteer so that I could be an adult who could do something with his hands. I met my wife there while both of us were volunteered. My wife is a good person, but she was never close to her parents or her siblings, yet she adored my mother since she met her. There were times when I thought she loved my mother more than she loved me, and we laughed about it. Deep down, I think she was looking for the bond between mother and daughter that she did not have from her mother. When I finished my studies, I found a job. We moved in together, but she wasn't comfortable that I called my mum every day. Remind you, those were 10 to 15 minute calls. But eventually, she stopped bringing it up. 2 years later, I bought a house for my mother, because we never had a house in our name. We lived from apartment to apartment, so for all the sacrifices she made, it was for me the least of it, and it was non-negotiable. That's where the problem started with my wife, then girlfriend. She wanted me to think about us first. I told her my dream had to always buy my mum a house since I was little, and that's what I had to do. But she complained about it to my mum. My mum didn't even know I bought a house for her, as it was supposed to be a surprise for her birthday. She was uncomfortable of receiving the house because of my wife and told me that it wasn't necessary, that we could use it for us when we get married. I was furious. I told my mother that the house was for her, that she could do with it whatever she wanted, but it was time for her to think about herself first. Our couple survived that. We got married and then we had our own house. Our life was going well until 2 months ago when my mother fell ill. I wanted her to come and live with us so that I could take care of her, but my wife didn't want to. I then decided to rent an apartment with my own money right next to our house so that I could be close to her and go there to take care of her. But even that idea didn't sit well with my wife. Me and my wife don't have children yet. We both work. I usually come home at 6 p.m. But since my mother is sick, I go to see her and come home at 8 p.m. On weekends, I see her for 1 to 2 hours, and then the rest of the time I spend it with my wife. We go on dates, and I always accompany her in her hobbies, even though she never went to mine. 2 days ago, she told me that she thought about it and she thinks I prioritize my mother too much. She told me that I had to choose between my mother and the life I want to build with her. The truth is that I never made her feel that way. We both work, but I'm the one who cooks, and I pay a person to do the housework. I make sure I do the dishes she likes. She didn't even know what I like to eat because I never complain. I run her baths, give her massages, flowers. I write her poems that I hide somewhere in the house for her to find. We go on a trip 1 weekend a month. I earn much more money than her. I told her to keep her money for herself and I take care of all the bills, even hers. I always make sure to listen to her and consider her opinion. And I think I'm easygoing because I can change my mind to accommodate hers. But I realize that she tries to completely dominate me, and the only subject where I don't give her a choice is my relationship with my mother. So there, I'm going to have a talk with her and put some very clear boundaries. If she doesn't want to, well, we're going to divorce. Just want it off my chest. And we do have updates to this post, and OP was quite involved in the comments below this post as well. So Avery Avrina says, if you're not neglecting your relationship with your wife and still pulling your weight in the house, I don't see the problem here. You can't just simply abandon your own mother while she's sick. What exactly does she want from you? OP responds saying, well, I asked the same question, but she can't answer. She says she feels that way. I think she does a lot of projecting of her own relationship with her mother. Her mother is very toxic and abusive. I always try to be there for her, listening to her, being a support system, but anytime I'm listening to her, she ends up telling me that I can't even understand her because I have the perfect mother. Curious replies to that saying, she might need therapy. I come from a very abusive home and my mother-in-law is really amazing. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but we talk things out. While I wouldn't want her living with us, I need my own space and she doesn't really understand that. I would absolutely have her living close by so we can care for her. If she wanted, it rains too much for where we live. I would never ask my spouse to choose between us. It sounds like you make enough time for everyone. OP responds again saying, yeah, I think she needs therapy. The funny part of this is, she talks with my mum every day too, and I don't even mind. They can have whatever relationship they want. She even calls my mum, Mum. Does all of this make sense? Her actions are so contradictory, sometimes that I have trouble seeing the logic. But I might be pissed off by her lately, so I may not do her justice with this post, other than that she is a wonderful human being. Big Booty says, does your wife have any siblings? I grew up with an abusive mother and my mum kind of had an opposite effect on my brother, while she was abusive towards him too, in which he grew up very dependent on her. Even in his adulthood, he is extremely protective and dependent of her, and seeing him act that way and even fight with strangers to protect her annoys the hell out of me. Not saying that this is your situation, but taking a random stab in the dark. Totally possible this is more of an issue because of her own experiences with her mum. That being said, if you both truly love each other, are in a healthy relationship, I think she'd meet you halfway on some of the things you've mentioned. One way to find out. OP responds again saying, yeah, she has siblings. I'm a very independent person. It's not a need to call my mum every day, it's a choice. My mum never gets involved in any aspect of my life, and I don't talk my marital problems with her. My wife though will tell anything to my mum. Whenever we have a disagreement, she will go talk to my mum. She even calls my mum, Mum. That's why I don't get it. My mum never abused me in any aspect. She's a very soft and easygoing person. But if there is one thing I might take from her, and that's not a good thing, is the fact that I always put my people first before my own needs. My mum is exactly the same way. My wife is also a good person. I may portray her in a bad way in my post because I was very upset when I wrote it, but she's a wonderful human being. Not just with me, but with people. That's why I don't get it. Someone suggests that anything about OP's relationship is not healthy basically, and OP responded saying, I don't know you, but it seems you're projecting a lot. First, if I had to do it a million times again, I would buy my mum a house without a second thought. Back then my wife was just my girlfriend and I had the project of buying my mum a house before she was in the picture. Second, my mum is very independent. Has her own job, her own friends, her hobbies, etc. So am I. If it's unhealthy to call my mum every day to take care of her when she is ill, so I am an unhealthy person and proud to be one. Third, my wife has her own money and I never asked her what to do about it. We have some accounts together for every minor or major financial decision and some savings accounts too. But I have my own accounts and I can do everything I want with the money of those accounts, such as renting a house for my mum so I can take care of her, or helping friends here and there. But even though I can do whatever I want with the money from my own accounts, I always talk about it first with my wife. The decision obviously is mine because I am a 34 grown-ass man and don't need anyone to tell me how to deal with my money. Someone relates to OP's story and OP replies saying, I can relate a lot about what your story, thanks for sharing. That's exactly how my wife was in the beginning. There were a time I would try to be close to my in-laws, but she would consider it as a betrayal, so I stopped. I learned that every family relationship isn't like mine, but my wife didn't try to work through her issues, and it became more and more heavy for me. Sure, I didn't know how to help her with her issues, as there's no improvement, but I never understand her behavior towards a relationship I have with my mum, because I can tell she talks more to my mum than I do. When I used to bring that up, she can't explain it. Whenever she gets ill, she would go to my mum so she can take care of her. And it used to make me think I couldn't even take care of her since she went to see my mum. But that doesn't get me much because I thought she was trying to have a mum-daughter bond she never had. She goes to girls' trips with my mum once a year without me. But she would get hurt if I tried to do the same without her. So the three of us end up going for a week trip. So I never understood why she was trying to control my relationship with my mum while trying to be the best daughter-in-law possible, even if I never asked her to do anything for my mum. But after talking to her this weekend, I realized that all the time she was in a one-sided competition to be the one my mum loves the most. This is gross and creepy, so I don't know where to go from here. So like my SO are literally trying to sabotage my relationship with my mum, so she can be seen as the best daughter ever. How sick is it? And to me, it did feel like partly jealousy of some sort coming out, especially when OP mentioned at the very beginning of their post that they didn't have a good relationship with their own parents, but did with yours. So it felt like there was some sort of jealousy dynamic going on, if you like. And when OP was talking about mum when she was ill, moving in with them, I could kind of see wife's side of things, of not wanting an ill relative or a relative in general moving in with you. As you guys know, over the last couple of years, I've seen some ill relatives. I wouldn't blame anyone for not wanting that person to move into their situation. Everyone needs their own space, but OP did say there was compromises in this about mum moving closer, and she was against that as well, which I didn't get, especially when she seems to be visiting her and calling her anyway. Really, really strange. But anyway, OP comes in with an update which says, "Hi guys. I keep getting messages asking for an update. I wanted to do it sooner, but couldn't find the spare time to do it properly. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for the comments and DMs in my last post. I tried to reply to everyone, but I couldn't. I read you all though. Before confronting my wife, I had time to reflect. I came to the conclusion that I will never again let anyone in my life dictate the relationship I should have with my mother, or the time I should dedicate to her. So I decided to answer the ultimatum. But first, I wanted to know if there was another reason why she gave this ultimatum. She replied that nope. I asked her, apart from what she blamed me for, was there something she wanted to tell me but couldn't tell me? She said there was nothing and asked me to get to the point. So I told her I wanted a divorce. She remained frozen. I think she was shocked because she wasn't talking. She was just staring at me. I tell her everything that was on my mind, that our values are too different. I was going through the worst moment in my life. My mother was sick. We did several tests with her. Still don't know what she is suffering from. We don't know her family medical history because she was an orphan. It makes me anxious to know that overnight I could find myself alone in the world. Yes, alone in the world, because in these difficult times, all I needed was her support. But if my own wife thinks that I should give less attention to my mother who is sick and who needs me more than ever, it's time to go our separate ways. She still didn't say anything, so I told her I'm going to a hotel for now and we'll discuss later how we're going to separate. I took some of my things and left. The next day, when I went to see my mother, she figured out something wasn't right, but I was not going to tell her I was separating from my wife because she could not bear our relationship, especially since she was sick like that. I didn't want to add more torment to her. I never discussed my marriage issues with my mother anyway, so she does not know our problems, and honestly, she adores my wife too much, and my wife behaves as if she were her own mother, so I was not going to tell her what she was thinking behind her back. My mum ends up telling me that my wife didn't come by that day. Yes, my wife, who asked me to reduce my contact with my mother, was seeing her every day, and I never asked her to do anything for my mother. She calls my mother Mum. When she gets sick, she used to go to my mother so she will take care of her. It used to hurt me because it's as if I couldn't take care of her, but she said that this was not the same. The attentions of a mother are different. I told myself that it was her way of creating a mother-daughter bond that she never had, and I understood her. She even said her mother used to tell her that she was not supposed to be born, that she was an accident, that she almost aborted her and regrets not doing it. Only a monster could say that to her child. So I never said anything whenever she wanted my mother's attention. Besides, I received enough love to share with whoever wanted it. My mother, after I left home to study, became a foster mum for children. She always did until 2 years ago. I've always loved each of the children with whom I still keep in touch and whom I still consider my siblings. Once a year, we all went on vacation together for a week. The children, my mother, and my wife. I generally take 2 months of vacation, of which the 6 weeks I devoted it to my wife, but the 2 weeks that I devoted to my mother and the children. It was too much for my wife. Anyway, I'm rambling, so when my mum told me she didn't come to see her that day, I went back home because I was worried. I found her in the bathroom with her clothes and red eyes, like she was crying all along. Seeing her like that was unbearable. I helped her out, but this woman who has so much pride collapsed in front of me with a lot of crying. I don't know if it was an hour or two, but she kept crying, calmed down and crying again. I just stayed silent. She ended up telling me that deep down, she never wanted me to be involved any less in my mother's life. She was always jealous of our relationship. She was always jealous of the attention my mother gave to the other children. She knows that it wasn't rational, but she couldn't help constantly striving to be number one in my mother's heart. It was kind of a competition for her. So when I wanted to take care of my mum, she didn't want me to be the one taking care of her. I was honestly furious, without saying anything of course, but I wondered if she was a psychopath or something. We are talking about a person who is seriously ill. She's thinking about her as a damn competition. Even if it means sabotaging the relationship I have with my mother and putting us in a situation where I wanted to divorce her. She told me that she was very jealous of me and that she would have liked to be in my place. If she had to choose, she would have chosen to be my mother's child rather than my wife, even if I was the love of her life, and that the only man she has ever known. She also told me that even if the world falls apart around me, I will remain stoic, that I live as if I don't need anyone, that I will give everything to others, but I don't know how to let others reach me, and she never managed to get there. Only my mother could get there. At that moment, I did not know what else to say. I was hooked on this idea of competition, so that I did not immediately grasp the scope of these words, but I still listened to her to the end. I put her to bed until she fell asleep, then I went to sleep in another room. In the morning, she was acting like nothing had happened. She was being herself and said, "I don't have to pity." I told her it was out of love, she was still my wife. She left to work and I do the same, but decided to stay at the hotel for the time being. During that time, I wondered what I could have done, acted or said to make her feel like that. Deep down, I think she is right. It's a defense mechanism I've had since childhood. I've never stayed in one place longer to make friends. It was heartbreaking. Every time we have to move between my 5 to my 15 years, I have moved more than 50 times. From apartment to apartment, from hotel room to hotel room. And since then, I think I've always lived my relationships like a squat. I never unpacked and settled in because I knew at any moment I could be kicked out. But I thought with my wife, I acted differently. But I guess not. So I thought maybe we didn't need to go that far. What we needed wasn't divorce, but therapy. Then this happened. A little over a week ago after our discussion, I was called from the hospital. My wife has been hospitalized. She apparently did not feel well. I went to visit her, but she didn't want to see me. If you see the eyes I saw, I've never seen so much hate in just 2 eyes. I told her bestie so she can have her support system because she didn't want me there. I told my mum. She asked me what I had done to my wife so that she ended up in the hospital, and that I should not stress a woman who was pregnant. I said, "What?" She told me my wife told her and asked her to keep it a secret because she wanted to tell me herself when she was ready. I don't know what was going through my head, between anger that it was my mother who told me, or happiness at having to be a dad for the first time, and total confusion at the surreal situation. I went to my wife and told her I knew, but she looked at me again angrily and told me that she had lost a baby and it was my fault. In an instant, I just get the news my wife was pregnant, but kept it from me. that I was going to be a dad and that we lost a baby, and that she was accusing me of having caused something that I did not even know. She asked me to leave and I left. I always wanted children, very early on. My wife wanted to put her career first. I understood and accepted. I've been trying to convince her for years, but without success. Now she gets pregnant, doesn't tell me anything. She talks to my mother about it, and she says I caused her miscarriage. Since then, she says she didn't tell me anything because she wanted to first confirm if I could deal with all the responsibilities I give myself and raise a child at the same time. I don't understand her, and I admit, since then I have a fierce hatred against her. I don't know how to look at her without having anger on me, and I don't want to hurt her with my words. I take care of her at home, but we don't talk to each other. I'm not going to stay with her, it's not possible. I started a session with a psychologist. He told me that patience was my best weapon, that I shouldn't make a permanent decision on emotions, that could be temporary, and that I should take time to see if there were things to salvage. Here is where I am. I don't know if I'll do another update. I took days off to be there for my wife and for my mother, but I'm feeling pretty depressed. And I just want to get away from all this bullshit right now. Thank you in any case for giving me your point on your first post, for your support, or your critics. And there was lots of comments talking about afterwards about trying to drive a wedge between OP and Mum. One comment said, I'd just like to break this down as a trauma-informed woman who understands manipulation very well because this is so prevalent in amongst our demographic. Wife admits she is jealous and is in a competition with you for your mother's love. You've wanted kids for years and wife declined. Wife gets pregnant, meaning she went off her birth control and only tells your mum she's pregnant. Wife demands you choose between her and your mum, knowing what your choice would be. Wife blames you for the stresses that caused a miscarriage. Wife knows you don't talk about your marriage with your mum. Then goes on to say there are only two logical conclusions for me. One, your wife secretly took steps to get pregnant. Tell your mum and get her excited to later cause a rift between you and your mum by making it look like you're the cause of her breakdown and ultimately a miscarriage. 2. Your wife lied about being pregnant to accomplish number 1. Either way, she's admitted that she's competing with you for your mother's love. I think it's time you come clean to your mum because although you're not talking to her about your marriage, your wife is, and she's actively attempting to cause a rift between you and your mum. And all I can say at the end of this is that I'm glad OP is in therapy to unpack some of this because reading this myself, it is just absolute madness. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's story, showing your love, support and time to not just me, but towards the posts and towards one another in the comments as well. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you so much, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.